The next item is the event initial report regarding a worker injured on May 31st, 2016 at Cameco Corporation Rabbit Lake operation. And Mr. Mooney, I see, is still with us on this, and I understand that Mr. Harriman from the Rabbit Lake operation will join us. Mr. Harriman, can you hear us?
Yeah, it's Sean Harriman from Rabbit Lake, for the record.
And we also have Mr. Kasiku.
Yes, it's Len Kosky, Chief Mine Inspector for Saskatchewan, for the record.
Okay, thank you. So, staff, I understand, Ms. Tadros, you're going to make some comments here. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Mr. President, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Haiti Tadros. I am the Director General of the Directorate of Nuclear Cycle and Facilities Regulation. Joining me today are colleagues from the Uranium Mines and Mills Division, Mr. Bob Lloyd, the Director of that division, and by video conference, our colleague Mark Langdon, the Supervisor at the regional site in Saskatoon. Beyond what is in our EIR for this event, we are available to take any questions that you may have.
Okay, so let's start with Ms. Velshi.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of questions around the nature of the injury. So we do hear that there's some head injury and bruising to the leg. So has the worker come back to work? What was the severity of the injury?
Bob Lloyd, for the record. The worker was airlifted to hospital, and he was back at work the next day.
Thank you. And it says he was extricated from the tank, so I guess he couldn't move on his own. This was a confined space?
Exactly right. There's a spotter outside. There was another colleague inside, and they essentially took him out of the tank, and with proven procedures that they have for extricating people from tanks. So they wanted to make sure that probably he was dizzy, and they strapped him up and they pulled him out. And Cameco can provide more details to that since they had people there.
It's Liam Mooney for the record. I have Kevin Nagy with me as well, the Director of Compliance and Licensing for Saskatchewan operations, and perhaps he could add a little bit more in relation to the CCD and the scaffolding.
Good morning, Kevin Nagy for the record. Just to confirm, the site emergency response team did respond to this event, and due to the nature of the injury and abundance of precaution around head injuries, they did extricate the individual from a tank. What they wound up doing was they attached him to a backboard and then hoisted him up and out of the tank using some ropes and some hoists. They then took him to the site medical center at the mill facility at Rabbit Lake.
Thank you.
Monsieur Tolgiesi.
Merci, Monsieur President. You were saying that this is a contract worker, which means it was not Cameco's employee. Am I right?
Bob Lloyd, for the record, yes, these are specialized people that have been trained to build scaffolding, and therefore they're brought in on a contract basis as required while they're doing refurbishment. Thank you.
So you expect that he received the training, appropriate training, and he has appropriate experience, and at Cameco you have working procedures to assemble, disassemble scaffolding in special cases, special conditions, like in this case, confined space. Did you check from a Cameco standpoint where his experience was standing? To Cameco?
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Kevin Nagy for the record. That's correct. The employee or the contractor in question was a contract employee. He was qualified and competent to do scaffolding. This particular individual had a number of years of experience, and our understanding is he had recently written the exam to get his certification as a ticketed scaffolder. As far as written procedures or work instructions go, as with other trades, we rely on, such as carpentry, plumbing, electrical, we rely on the skills of the qualified and competent people in those fields. Particular to this job, there had been a job hazard analysis done ahead of time on the overall work involved in cleaning the launder around the thickener tank. That's what this scaffold was required for. Following the event, we did do another job hazard analysis particular to the assembly and disassembly of wheeled scaffolding, and did not resume similar work until that was completed and we had additional controls put in place.
And my last, Mr. President, that according to report, the employee or contractor was removing the upper support connecting to the scaffolding to the wall. And I'm surprised he was not secured while working on potential moving device and confined space. He didn't have a lifeline. Usually when you work in a confined spaces, you have some securities that you don't fall in. I don't know how high was this tank, but I suppose it was maybe 10 to 15 feet or maybe a little bit higher. So he was not attached by lifeline to make sure that he will not fall all that distance, because potentially it could be a fatal accident.
Kevin Nagy for the record. Just to clarify, the thickener that the individual was working in, we do classify that as a confined space, but an unrestricted confined space. So it is a round thickener or a round tank. It's approximately 100 feet across and about 10 feet high at the wall. However, it is open. It's not closed in on top. So we do regard that as a confined space because there isn't a means of egress. So we do permit that work, and one of the controls we have in place was the spotter who was working above. The scaffold, the working platform was approximately 7 feet off the floor of the tank. It was situated along the inside of the wall of the tank. It was being used to clean a launder that extends around the perimeter of the tank. The support arms that had been in place while people were working and cleaning the launder, those were attached to the scaffolding. They extend over the wall of the tank and down the outside, and those are meant to brace the scaffolding and prevent as a control against any lateral movement while work's being gone on the scaffolding. The particular work this individual was doing at that time was to prepare the scaffold to move underneath a set of pipes. So normally for this work they would just be able to come down and then just roll the scaffold to its next position without any disassembly. In this particular case, they had to disassemble the upper portions to move it under a pipe that was in their way. So he had taken off the support arms that I'd mentioned and had just completed removing the upper portions of the scaffolding. There are locks on the caster wheels at the base of the scaffold. The contractor had checked to make sure those were engaged before he went up. He also had a spotter at the bottom that was on one of the legs to make sure there was no lateral movement while he was doing the work. However, that did not seem to be an adequate control, as when he was in the process of descending the scaffolding, one of the wheels, one of the casters did rotate. The wheels themselves didn't turn, but the caster did rotate, and that caused the scaffold to start to skid down the slope within the tank, and ultimately the worker fell off the scaffolding and it overturned.
Okay, thank you. Dr. McKeown?
Thank you. So just under the event description, the second bullet. So this is a question raised out of that last answer. So did the worker fall 2 feet, or did he fall from 7 feet and impact at 2 feet?
The worker, Haiti Tadros for the record, the worker fell 2 feet.
So presumably he was wearing a hard hat?
Cameco?
Kevin Nagy, for the record, my understanding is the contractor had the appropriate PPE for the work, and that would have included a hard hat, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hervé?
In the actions taken or in progress, further action plan are in progress, you're supposed to, well, Cameco Rabbit Lake is conducting an investigation of the event, and you're supposed to receive this investigation and follow-up report. So it was supposed to be provided in 21 days. So have you received the, it's on page 2 under license actions.
Thank you for your question. Yes, the report was received way before the time that it was due. Thank you.
So everything is completed?
Everything's completed, yes, sir.
Everything is completed then. And in the bottom, the action plan, CNSC staff will ensure that Cameco communicates the event to other licensed uranium mines, and etc. So has that been done? How are you going to do that to ensure that Cameco communicate the event to others?
Bob Lloyd, for the record, normally this will be communicated and checked in due time. I would suspect, and I would ask Mr. Mark Landon in our Saskatoon office to confirm that they were awaiting the results of this meeting in order to, if further information or questions came up, so that we would share the complete file on them. Therefore, I would ask Mr. Mark Landon to confirm his plans for communicating that information.
Mark Langdon for the record. Cameco has already informed all the other operating sites about what's happened. They will continue as if they have a number of corrective actions that they've taken, and will continue in inspections to check to make sure that they're following all the corrective actions that they have. We have an inspection going at Rabbit Lake this week, and the person has gone to the tank and looked at some of the modifications that they've made to the scaffolding already. And I believe SAS Labor has also had somebody up there and looked at similar things. But we will continue in further inspections to check all the corrective actions that they put in place, make sure they've implemented them properly.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Triasi?
2 short ones. You were Cameco. You didn't mention the lifeline. So, do your procedures require wearing a lifeline when employee or worker is working at that height from floor? And in this case, this tank's floor was inclined, so he could just fell and slip right down also.
Kevin Nagy, for the record, the floor was inclined approximately 10.5 degree pitch from the outside wall down towards the center of the tank. The legs of the scaffolding are adjustable, So that was done. So the work platform was level, and the casters again were locked. One of the controls that we have put in place as a result of the job hazard analysis that we did following the event was to provide additional support to those casters to ensure that they remain stable when in use. So we did not resume this job or similar scaffolding work until that was done. What's the first question? Oh, and provincial regulations with respect to fall control, fall arrest, generally require it if you're working at a height above 3 meters, approximately 10 feet. In this case, the work platform was approximately 7 feet off the floor of the tank, so he wasn't wearing fall arrest. That said, we are conducting a root cause investigation into this event, and we will be looking at, in addition to the controls we've already put in place, we'd be looking at other corrective actions that we could employ to prevent a similar event in the future.
Okay, anything else? I just have a quick question. So these are contractors coming into your space. In case something serious happens, do they bring their own insurance, or are you liable to anything? Cameco.
It's Liam Mooney for the record. We have a similar system to Ontario, WSIB, WCB. So there's a workers' insurance system that's in place for all our employees and contractors on site, such that the liability issues addressed to that workers' compensation mechanism.
So they can then apply to that particular body to get a ruling on whether further action are required.
It's Liam Mooney for the record. If this individual did have to miss time due to the injury, which is not the case in these circumstances, yes, they can apply to the Provincial Workers' Compensation Board for compensation in that regard.
Okay. Dr. McKieran?
Sorry, just a follow-up to that. So under the conventional health and safety SCA, if this had resulted in a lost time injury, would this be reported in Cameco statistics, or as a contractor would it be excluded from Cameco statistics?
It's Liam Mooney for the record. Our safety performance is for the licensed site, which includes Cameco employees as well as contractors. So the incident, and if it was a lost time incident, would be reported in our safety statistics as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any final comment here? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Before moving on to the event initial report regarding the Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, I understand that CNSC staff will inform us of an event that occurred last weekend at the Key Lake operation. While we still have Mr. Mooney, I hope Mr. Mooney is still online with us, and Mr. Nagy from Cameco on the video conference. So, Ms. Tadros, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, for the record, Haiti Tadros speaking. On June 19th, 2016, the CNSC was informed by Cameco, in accordance with the regulations and their license condition, that a contract worker was found deceased within his living quarters at the Key Lake mill operations. Preliminary reports on this tragic event indicate the individual died of natural causes. The case is currently with the provincial coroner. We would like to add that Cameco has posted information of this event on their website, and the CNSC has done the same as well. We are available if you have any questions.
Okay, anybody has a particular question? When is results expected to be known?
Haiti Tadros, because it was with the provincial coroner, it will be up to them to determine if anything further needs to be done in this case.
But we're not expecting it to be related to kind of work in that sense. Cameco?
It's Liam Mooney for the record. No, we're not expecting it to be work-related. We might receive confirmation from the provincial coroner that it's not work-related. There's no assurance that we would receive that information again, because we're we're in a contracting relationship with the employer of the said individual, and there's personal health information involved. If it's a personal health issue, as we expect, we might not hear anything further in that regard.
Okay. Thank you.